First, we have public hearing to receive comments on property owners concerning the rezoning block 96, 1 through 14, blocks 116, lots 1 through 14, and block 117, lots 1 through 14, original town site. It's 6 o'clock. Anybody here?
I don't think so, but I will, if it's okay, I'll tell you where it is, just so that it's on the record of where it is. It's on the southwest kind of section of town. If you turn on Mesquite, it's between 6th and 8th on 2 blocks, and then from Palma back to Mesquite. And what it is there's 3 blocks there that were zoned manufactured housing some years ago. The idea that maybe someday that would be all manufactured housing hasn't happened. And so someone wants to build a home, and because manufactured housing, home's not allowed. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's where it is and what it's about. But I don't think there's anybody here to visit about it.
Okay, if there's no one here to speak on that, we'll close that at 6:02. 6:02, open a public hearing to receive comments from the residents concerning a variance request on the side setback requirements for lot 13 and 14, block 61, original town site of Los Cerros, from 6 feet to 5 feet, and lot size requirements from 60 feet to 50 feet. Anybody?
I don't think so, but I will, if it's okay, I'll tell you where it is, just so that it's on the record of where it is. I think our volume is blowing back, but anyway, it's, I'll tell you on this one, where it is too. It's right here behind, Dairy Queen, in that area that we rezoned several years ago, and specifically rezoned it for duplexes. However, the ordinance calls for lot sizes 6 and 60 feet wide, and the setbacks 5. 6, but because we knew that the lot size were smaller, we've granted this variance on all of them to date so far. So that's where it is. It's next door to the same duplexes that have already been done that way.
Okay, if we don't have any public comments on this, we'll close it at 6:03. 6:03, public hearing to receive comments from residents concerning the application for consideration conditional use permit to allow mechanic shop to locate at 910 South Arroyo Boulevard, B2, Zone C4, Heavy Commercial District. We don't have any public comment. We'll close that one at 6:04. 6:04, open public hearing to receive comments from residents concerning a variance request on fence height requirements for 1006 South Arroyo Boulevard from 4 feet chain link fence to a 5 feet chain link fence in front of the property. If we don't have a public comment on that, we'll close that at 6:04.
I approve.
Got a motion?
motion, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consider an action to excuse absence of Henry Bebon from the April 19th, 2021 and June 2021 planning and zoning meetings.
As I explained last time, just keeping up with paperwork so that if anybody questions, they know that, you know, there's legitimate things. Sometimes people have to work, sometimes people have to be out of town, so he is out of town and we recommend that they be approved.
I approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider an action to approve rezoning block 96, lots 1 through 14, block 116, lots 1 through 14, and block 117, lots 1 through 14, original town site.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board on this, that's the area where it's manufactured housing. When you look up the code with manufactured housing, even under conditional use, you're not able to put a home, which is kind of strange because in those 3 blocks, there's 23 single-family homes. There's also 7 mobile homes and a couple of vacant lots. So, you know, how do you deal with that effectively? I think if you have a home there and you want to rebuild it, you probably should be able to. So the fix for that is to rezone it, the whole thing to single family homes. You can still ask for conditional use for a manufactured housing for a trailer home if you wish. Like if someone had one there already, they would be grandfathered, but someone else could ask for one and do it under conditional use, which is allowed under housing. Why that's that way, I'm not sure, but that's the dilemma that we're in this request. And the gentleman's here if you got any questions from him. But I don't know that there's any questions.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 4, consider an action to approve variance to request on side setback requirements for lots 13 and 14, block 61, original town site, lots frontage from 6 feet to 5 feet, and the lot size requirements from 60 feet to 50 feet.
I make a motion approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider an action to approve the application for conditional use permit to allow mechanic shop to locate 910 South Arroyo Boulevard, B2, Zone C4, Heavy Commercial District.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 6, consider an action to approve a variance request on fence height requirements for 1006 South Arroyo Boulevard from 4 feet chain link fence to a 5 feet chain link fence in front of the property. Do I have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Consider an action to approve the final plat for Delgado subdivision.
This is the area on Canal Street, right by the railroad tracks. If you'll remember, a couple years ago, they asked for a variance to build duplexes and it wasn't granted. And so they had 3 lots that they used to build 2 single-family homes. We gave them a variance on the setbacks a little bit to be able to make that happen. And now they want to subdivide it to make 2 lots instead of 3. So they have to go through the process. I'm sure they want to be able to sell one versus the other.
I make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
2 seconds.
Item number 8, consider an action to approve preliminary plat for Feather Ridge Phase 4. Do we have a motion?
They already came last meeting before they did this for the setbacks. Just in the cul-de-sac though.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a presentation, introductory presentation by Kendi East Collaborative on the Los Rennes UDC project sketch.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Steve Sizemore is going to do a presentation. He's the one that's working on our development code. Like some of these repeat requests for variances, address some of those, and just our code was done in the 80s, 90s, long time ago. It needs updated, and so the city, along with the Community Development Corporation, hired this firm to help us in updating that code and making it more fluid, better use for our developers, for us as a city, and for you. Some of those repeat things, we make a decision once and for all for those instead of taking time out for something that is gonna need a change. We can do that up front. And so Steve's working with us on that, and he wants to go through a presentation and on some items, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mark. Can everybody hear me okay? I think we're good to go tonight. Everything sound okay,
Yes.
guys?
Yes.
Great. Okay. And I have a presentation, the screen here. We'll just have a conversation for the next few minutes. But I'm Steve Sizemore with Kendi Keys Collaborative. The firm is based in Houston and Sugar Land, Texas, but actually I'm working from Louisville, Kentucky. And we have offices in a few places outside of Sugar Land, but we're a small firm. And we're happy to be working with you and trying to make the Planning Commission's life a little easier, the city's processes easier, and help facilitate just a good quality built environment for Los Fresnos going forward. So in the next few minutes here, I just want to give you an overview of, briefly mention who we are, what we will be doing for you, what you'll get in return, and why this is important, especially at this time in your development. So we've done over 200 codes and plans for cities. A lot of those have been in Texas, so we have a lot of Texas experience. Everybody in our firm has worked in local government, so we're very familiar with the dynamics of how that goes, and look forward to working closely with you on making this a good project for you. And so we're intentionally small so we can work closely with you. We're also using our sister company, which is the Encode Plus, and this will create an online interactive code. We'll be drafting the code in the Encode Plus format, and that way it'll be dynamic, real time. We can interact with the staff, we can interact with the community, and provide a document that is very user-friendly and easy to navigate. So stay tuned for that as we move forward with the project. So we're a multidisciplinary firm. As I mentioned, who I am. I also have my partner, David Baird, who's not with me tonight, but David's practiced in Texas for years and has a legal background, has a law degree, not licensed in Texas, but he is a legal expert. So he is available to help me when we get to that point. But anyway, we have a lot of different expertise in our firm to help you. So the way we're organizing the Unified Development Code is around the idea of the user's experience. So when you look at a code, you want to know, what is my property zone? What uses can I have, or what can I do? How much can I build? So these are the parts that are going to be in the front of the code, and towards the back will be more of the process, the steps that you would take to get approvals, and then generally how things are measured. So the idea is for us to bring in the Unified Development Code, bring all the relevant chapters from the existing code of ordinances that are related to the development process. So the subdivision process, the zoning code, the manufactured housing, pull these all into one document that makes it so much more streamlined for you. And we'll also be focusing on things like enhancing the character of the community. And then this is an opportunity to integrate best practices. Mark mentioned this, it's the first real update in quite a while. So we have an opportunity here to explore different uses that may not be currently permitted by right. And then also to review and ensure that the development code is in compliance with current state and constitutional items. So the goal is to create a really useful, really easy to follow code that's predictable and certain. It provides the opportunity that we can look at ways to streamline processes and overall just make it a really easily organized and easy to follow code. And so to do that, we kind of look at 4 different ways. One, make it simple as possible. Use plain language, use a lot of graphics and tables, create flexibility, build in the flexibility into the code for the decision makers, for the applicant. And then look at ways to balance the policies to work with the market so you can achieve the goals that the city has. So understand what these overall goals are and really kind of make it realistic for you. And provide what we like to say, multiple paths to yes. So not one way to achieve your goal. And in the end, really create value for the city, for the developer, for the residents who all live there. So look at ways we can streamline the review procedures, and bring in these best practices and then create, really enhance the character of the city there. So you have to realize, one size does not fit all. So we have to calibrate these to each community. So, Los Fresnos does not have a giant planning staff. So we need to make this code work for the staff that reviews the development plans. So we'll be working closely to make sure that everything is right size for your community. So right now we've been working since May, actually since April, but really hands-on since I made the visit in late May to visit with community. So we've begun drafting the code, and we're going to be doing this in 2 modules, so 2 parts here. The first part is more about the dimensions and the uses and the site development standards. And then the second part, as I'll mention in a moment, will be more the procedures. But the goal is to finish this project by next April, take it for adoption at that time. So we'll have a few more steps and opportunities to communicate with you prior to then. So I mentioned the 2 modules, so we've got more of the bones of the code in terms of the zoning districts and the land uses, and then the standards here. All that will be in the first module, and we're going to be providing that to staff in the next month, actually, these parts, and they're going to be reviewing that. And then a few months after that, we'll be going through the module 2, which will be more of the procedures and looking at other things like nonconformities and the back end of the development code. So when I was there in May, had a chance to meet with several folks, have a listening session, and get an idea of what's working, what's not working, what you'd like to see. And I kind of organized the discussions into what I call PARC, which is thinking about ways that things you want to preserve, what you would like to add, remove, or even keep out. And so the first group I met with was some developers, just a handful, but got really good input from that. And some of the things they wanted to protect, shopping center parking, making sure it was clear, protect the integrity of the residential areas, and kind of everything seems to be working fine with setbacks. So make sure we protect that as well for residential and non-residential properties. But the idea was to add more commercial property, ensure that, there's more by right commercial opportunities, especially on the roads like Arroyo and Ocean Boulevard. So, and then look for ways that we can modernize the land uses, create affordable housing options, and then look at ways that we can treat transitions between what may be incompatible uses or uses that are not, from less intensive to more intensive uses. One of the things to remove, and I'm sure you might agree with this, is any vague language that exists in the code. I mean, this is an opportunity to really make that right. Remove any confusion, make this code simpler to use for everybody. And then also, as Mark mentioned, look at ways that we can kind of eliminate or remove the need for requesting legislative approvals on things. Look at ways that we can actually streamline that and make it more staff approvable. So we're going to be looking at options for that. Some other issues that we kind of talked about was the need to reduce the need for variances, and look at parking ratios. Make sure they're current with any needs of the city and any best practices and data. So we'll be looking at that as well. And this was something we heard from the developers. The other session they had was with the kind of what we're calling business owners, contractors, city leaders. We just pulled in a handful of people with that as well. Heard a lot of the same themes, but this group brought up really the idea that Los Fresnos as a residential community. And that was clear to me when I was there. Real strong sense of community. And so the idea is to protect the small town, family-friendly suburban community feel there. But help, the business district that's there to flourish, make sure that we get it right for them, really protect the access and the areas around the parks and the open space that exist in the city. So looking at ways to connect to the parks. There was also the desire for, provide opportunity for healthcare facilities to come in. So we don't want the code to prevent that from happening or make it harder. Look at ways to make the subdivision standards easier, like making better road standards, clarify the mixed use development standards, and then the idea of parking ratios, consider an employee provision for those parking ratios that was brought up in the discussion. The group also brought up the vague language in the code and removing some of the parking conflicts. So looking at ways that we can maybe do shared use parking or other ways to make, especially in the plazas, making it easier for the developer to understand that. An idea that came up in this group was, not the desire to attract big industrial uses. So, and that goes hand in hand with that desire to kind of protect the residential character of the area. So, but it may not be the big industrial, maybe something light. So we look at it from a commercial perspective, but the idea was that, keep Los Fresnos closer to what it is today. And then also some of these other items that I think was brought up in the hearing tonight was looking at ways to reduce any variances on lots, make it easier to do development by right. Address sign standards, especially along Highway 100 and Arroyo, and then strengthen the provision for measuring lots, making sure things like cul-de-sacs, like it's clear of how you measure those provisions. So these are some of the big topics that were discussed in these listening sessions. I'm sure there's a lot more, and I'll be following your hearings over the next month or two and looking back at what you've already been reviewing and talking with the staff and getting things right. So as I mentioned, we're beyond phase one now. We've presented to the staff, sort of the plan for the development ordinance, development code. We're into phase two now, the drafting phase. So we'll be doing that between now and January. And then once we get to January and February of next year, we'll be entering into the public review and comment. And so we'll have opportunities between now and then to present to you as well, the update on that and have discussions. And then the idea is by March and April of next year, move it into the adoption phase. So what will you get out of this? As I mentioned earlier, we like to create codes for our clients that if they're going to be easy to use, one way to do that is through graphics, through tables, and just through clear organization. It just makes it easier to know what is expected and how much and elements like that. So really customize it for the users. So we're going to be looking at pulling in all of our best practices that we've done for many other communities and make it right for you. And so I mentioned development code and why this is important. So it's an opportunity to kind of pull all these issues together and create a modern language, modern practices, make sure that it is a code that's ready to move into the future. Consolidate as many of the review procedures, standards, and definitions into one place so you know exactly what you're looking at. And then kind of look at ways to remove any redundancies, create consistent processes. So that's one of the benefits of the UDC is to make it consolidated so it's all in one place. And then that way it's it's easier to use for staff and for the developers or anybody else using it. And then, as I mentioned, it's organized to kind of flow with the review process. So from a zoning change to subdivision review, to site plan, to building permit, and then things like certificate of occupancies. And so all this will be done through the Encode Plus tool. And I think you'll be pleased with how that turns out at the end. So that's a general overview of what we're going to be doing. I know I threw a lot of big ideas at you, but we've had a lot of good discussions, and I think as we begin to deliver some of the early parts of the code here, we'll have even better conversations. So if you have any questions at this time, I'd be happy to discuss that or see what's on your mind. But I appreciate the opportunity to present.
Any particular questions? I know some of it's hard to hear, but if you follow them, you could kind of keep up. Questions?
I might have one question. I don't know. I know he's talking about employee parking ratios for businesses. Is there a customer parking ratio?
Yes. That's typically you put for it's not per customer. It depends on the use. Often it's per square foot, or if it's sometimes it's if it's an institutional use, it might be per user, like a hospital. I'm just throwing it out, but a hospital per bed. It depends on the use. So obviously, customer, you measure that typically with square feet, but every use has a different measure. So it's not a one size fits all approach.
I'll answer a little bit of that because it's something that we struggle with. The biggest problem is when they build a 6-unit complex, a plaza, and they have no idea who's going to rent it. So how do we calculate the parking? We try to do our best and go to what requires the greatest number of parking spaces and require them to do that. But sometimes that doesn't even fall through, because if like one end of it becomes a restaurant, that takes a lot more parking. But this, like the office complex, is done by square foot. The same way with a retail shop, but it depends on the usage. Then if someone goes in there and they want to do a beauty shop or a barber shop, well, like the one here by the railroad tracks, there's seven chairs in there. You do the calculation, that means I got 7 employees, so I should have 7 employees, 7 people in the chair, that's 14. And that's not counting anybody waiting while these are coming and going. So you already got 14, and that whole complex there doesn't have 14. So that creates the struggle. And then, of course, the business owner wants to rent, and we want them to rent, but then we get the fallback as there's no place to park. And so that's what he's going to be working on to try to strengthen that for us in those types of situations. And then, of course, the number of employees, sometimes we go by what they say, and then you go in 6 months later and there's twice as many employees as what they said they were going to have. So we want to get a standard instead of having to rely on someone telling us what could be. So
that's right.
Does that help?
That's right. And one of the things we're doing too is pulling in, we use what's the ITE standards. We review those and see what national, especially for small like suburban, smaller cities, a lot of the older standards that a lot of cities have used for years, they're typically, and don't differentiate between an urban or a suburban setting. So we'll be looking at more of a suburban and small town setting and making sure those numbers fit for what the expectations would be. I mean, unless you do a full intensive study of your parking needs, sometimes you have to kind of set the best standard you can and then adjust from there. But also look at ways that different uses have more intensive uses, have more intensity at different times. So the restaurant hours may be different than the barbershop. So how can we make that work as well? So that's just an example. It's a common issue. You're not the only city with challenges. So we're in communication, and the planning new codes are all struggling with how you deal with parking. So
The other piece to that is defining the businesses. When it
Right.
was done in the 90s, today there's so many different kinds of businesses. And so we have a listing of this type of business, and then the number of square foot per employee. Well, there's so many businesses now that don't fit in any of those categories. And so we have to try to say, okay, we think it'll match up here. So that'll be addressed as well to give us a better knowledge on the front end to how to deal with those.
correct. Well,
Yeah, it depends on how much time you spend in the code itself before a meeting. We try to do all of that for you before. But it should minimize a lot so that it's, we struggle a lot because in say a certain zoning district, it'll list all the uses and then it says, or the uses under this one. And so you flip back to that one, you get to that one and it says, or the uses in this one, and you go to the other one. And so that makes
yeah,
having it simplified and listed under each area will simplify before it even gets here. And so that'll help tremendously. The other help will be like the things that we've brought to you about, say the industrial area there on South Arroyo. We talked about doing away with it altogether, but there was some concern that, we don't know what the future holds. We're by a railroad track. Maybe there will be some industrial, maybe even light that will want to come in there. Well, we would welcome it and we want it. In the meantime, we've got these other uses. So he's working to mold or I guess combine those other uses into the industrial where we'll protect both things, but yet not have to come to you. Like tonight we did a mechanic shop. I think we've approved over the last 2 years, 5, 6 mechanic shops. And why do we have to do that over and over again? So that becomes a simplistic thing for you
yeah.
and really your time.
Yeah, one of the most important things, if you think about, sometimes the use may not be as important as it is the effects of the use. So, if you need to maybe treat it differently through how you do buffering, landscaping between different uses, or how they do storage, or how loading is done at that site. If you can address those in the code, sometimes you can deal with the issues that places have with certain uses. So we're going to be looking at that closely, and then just maybe taking some districts and combining them to where it's just you're dealing with what actually is going on the ground, or what's realistic with what, will be coming in the future. So,
The other piece to that is, our developers and our business owners. The guy that's doing the mechanic shop, and there's two more already there, he's going, I have to wait for how long? Because you have to wait to send out notices to everybody, have the proper notice, come to this meeting, and, it's just the time. And so if we make those decisions ahead of time, the process becomes better for our business owners and our developers. And
Yep.
we want to be business friendly and developer friendly.
yeah, the key is to make the standards, make everything easy to understand, define it in the code up front, and then that way it can be followed by everybody. There will be occasional requests for exceptions, and so we'll have to consider that into the code and how those are treated. But the goal is to streamline everything that makes it easier for all sides of the development process. It sounds ideal, but it really can work. We know, we hear feedback from the communities we work with, and our goal is to make it easier for you. So. Well, we'll have chances to speak, through this process. And so Mark and the staff and I are in communication. So we're just getting this going, and
Anything
look
else?
forward to working with you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great evening.
Meeting is adjourned.